The wedding hall was buzzing with excitement, a celebration in full swing. The air smelled of fresh flowers, the soft glow of chandeliers casting a golden hue over the grand venue. Guests were dressed in their finest, laughing and chatting, unaware that behind the perfect facade, a mistake was about to change two lives forever. She never imagined her wedding day would turn out like this. Dressed in a stunning gown, she was supposed to be stepping into the next phase of her life, surrounded by loved ones, making memories to cherish forever. But as she stood there, the heavy fabric of her dress suddenly felt suffocating. The vows she was about to take were not the ones she had rehearsed. The man standing in front of her wasn't the one she had planned to marry. He hadn't planned on being here at all. He had arrived at the venue for a completely different reason, an errand, a meeting, or maybe just fate pulling him into something he never saw coming. But before he could make sense of it, a misunderstanding spiraled into something irreversible. And now, as the ceremony continued, he found himself at the center of it, standing next to a bride who looked as stunned as he felt. The whispers started as soon as the realization hit. A mix-up, a last-minute confusion. How could something like this even happen? The guests gasped, some exchanging looks of shock, others too caught up in the grandeur of the event to process what was unfolding. But amidst the chaos, the rituals continued, and before either of them could protest, the wedding was sealed with words, with traditions, and with an unintentional promise. She wanted to stop it. Her mind screamed at her to say something, to break free from the madness. But it all happened too fast, slipping through her fingers before she could regain control. One moment she was preparing to start a life with someone she had known for years, and the next, she was bound to a stranger by a mistake that no one seemed to know how to fix. He wasn't sure what to feel. His life had always been carefully planned, each step taken with logic and precision. But now, he was married accidentally, unexpectedly, unbelievably. His instincts told him to walk away, to find a way to undo this absurd situation. But something about her kept him rooted in place. The uncertainty in her eyes mirrored his own, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt compelled to stay. The night stretched on, and while the guests eventually accepted the unexpected turn of events, the two of them remained trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. Could a mistake like this be undone? Or was this the beginning of something neither of them saw coming? One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. That night, after the guests had left, and the music had faded, reality settled in like a thick fog. The once celebratory atmosphere now felt heavy with confusion. She sat in the dimly lit bridal suite, still in her wedding dress, her fingers gripping the edge of the vanity table. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman who barely recognized herself. How had things spiraled so far out of control? This wasn't the man she had planned to marry, yet here she was, his wife, at least in the eyes of the law, the guests, and their families on the other side of the house. He stood near the balcony, staring into the night sky, his mind racing with questions. This wasn't his world. He had no intention of being here, let alone being someone's husband overnight. His life had been structured, planned, with no room for unexpected detours. And yet, one miscommunication, one slip of fate, had tied him to a woman he barely knew. There was no easy way out of this, not with both their families believing in the validity of this marriage. Their families, of course, were thrilled. They saw it as destiny, as if the universe had intervened to bring them together. No one wanted to acknowledge the absurdity of it all. Her parents had assured her that things would work out, that love would follow in time. His family, while initially stunned, had already begun making plans for their new life together, acting as if this had been part of the plan all along. But neither of them could ignore the truth. They were strangers forced into the most intimate of bonds. The next morning, silence filled the house as they sat across from each other, still wearing the weight of the previous day's chaos. She avoided his gaze, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. He exhaled slowly, watching her, waiting for one of them to say what they were both thinking. Finally, she broke the silence. "This isn't right," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "We can't pretend like this is normal." He nodded, leaning back in his chair. "I know," he admitted, "but undoing this isn't as simple as just saying it was a mistake." She clenched her jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "It should be," she argued. "It should be that simple." But they both knew it wasn't. Their families had already announced the marriage to everyone they knew. Breaking it apart so soon would be seen as shameful, a scandal neither of them was ready to face. But was forcing themselves to stay in it any better? As days passed, their lives became an awkward routine. They shared the same house, but kept their distance. Conversations were brief, mostly out of necessity rather than choice. She buried herself in work, hoping it would serve as a distraction. He too threw himself into his responsibilities, trying to make sense of his new reality. But the tension between them was impossible to ignore. Every accidental touch, every stolen glance, carried an unspoken question. Were they truly trapped in this, or was there something neither of them was ready to admit? Then, the first storm came. A rumor had started spreading, one that neither of them saw coming. Whispers circulated about how their marriage was never supposed to happen, about how there had been another groom in the picture. Someone from the wedding had spoken to the press, spinning a story far from the truth. The headlines were brutal, questioning whether the marriage was even real. She felt humiliated. He felt cornered. Suddenly, their private nightmare had become public. And now, they were left with a choice: fight back together, or let the world decide their fate for them. The weight of the rumors settled heavily on her shoulders. Every time she stepped out, she felt the eyes of strangers lingering on her, judging, whispering. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages from friends, colleagues, even acquaintances who suddenly had opinions on her life. She had worked hard to build her career, to be respected in her field. And now, overnight, she had become nothing more than a headline, a scandal. He too felt the shift. Calls from business associates came laced with subtle questions, their tone polite but probing. Was the marriage real? Was this some elaborate cover-up? The speculation irritated him more than he let on. He hadn't asked for any of this, but now he was expected to play along, to keep up the appearance of a devoted husband, when, in reality, their marriage had been nothing more than a chaotic twist of fate. Tension between them grew. What had started as silent avoidance turned into sharp exchanges, each blaming the other for the situation they were trapped in. She accused him of being too indifferent, too willing to let people believe whatever they wanted. He countered by saying she cared too much about what others thought. The house that once held only awkward silence now echoed with frustration. Then came an unexpected visit. A well-known journalist reached out, offering them a chance to set the record straight. A televised interview. It was an opportunity one they both had different opinions on. "We could clear things up," she argued, pacing the living room. "Tell the truth. Explain what happened instead of letting people twist it." He leaned back against the couch, arms crossed. "And what exactly is the truth?" he challenged. "That we're stuck in a marriage neither of us wanted? That we barely know each other? Do you really think that's going to help?" She hesitated. Of course, she wanted to believe honesty would fix things, but deep down, she knew he had a point. The media thrived on spectacle. Their story was already messy. Telling the truth might only make things worse before they could decide. Another problem arose. His family, particularly his mother, had begun stepping in, trying to dictate how they should navigate their marriage. To the outside world, the family wanted to project unity, to show that this marriage had been fate, not a mistake. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted. "You should act like a real couple," his mother suggested over dinner one night. "Go out together. Be seen. People need to believe this marriage is strong." She nearly choked on her food. "Be seen?" she repeated. You want us to perform for the public? His mother gave her a patient but firm look. Not perform. Show stability. Otherwise, people will keep talking. And the longer they talk, the harder it will be to control the narrative. He remained quiet during the conversation, watching as his mother's words sank in. Later that night, as they sat in separate corners of the house, he finally spoke up. Maybe she's right. He said. She shot him a sharp glance. You think we should pretend to be something we're not? Isn't that what we've been doing already? He countered. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. The truth was, they were already living a lie, one they had no easy way out of. The weight of the revelation hung between them like an invisible force, suffocating and inescapable. She felt as if the ground beneath her had shifted, leaving her grasping for something steady, something real. He, on the other hand, had gone eerily quiet. His usual composure had cracked, and for the first time, she saw something raw in his eyes, something dangerously close to regret. Neither of them spoke for what felt like an eternity. The accusations that had surfaced weren't just rumors this time. They were laced with enough detail to make them impossible to ignore. Someone from his past had stepped forward with a claim that changed everything. Apparently, long before their unexpected marriage, there had been a decision made, one that had directly impacted her life without her even knowing. And now, the truth was out in the open. You knew, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes flickered to hers, but he didn't deny it. He didn't even try to defend himself. That silence told her everything she needed to know. She let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head in disbelief. So all of this, it was never just an accident, was it? He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. It's not what you think. She scoffed. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been playing a game this whole time. His expression darkened. You really think I planned for this? That I wanted things to turn out like this? She didn't have an answer for that. All she knew was that she felt betrayed in a way she hadn't even thought possible. The past had been rewritten before her eyes, and now she was questioning everything, every moment they had shared, every argument, every glance that had lingered just a little too long. But as much as she wanted to walk away, to put as much distance between them as possible, she couldn't. Because the moment the truth had come to light, everything around them had begun to unravel at an alarming pace. The media had latched onto the scandal like vultures, dissecting every detail, spinning new theories by the hour. The pressure was mounting, and it was no longer just about them. His company was on the brink of a major fallout, investors pulling out faster than he could do damage control. And her career? The opportunities that had once been within reach had started slipping through her fingers, all because no one wanted to be associated with the chaos surrounding her name. But then, something even more unexpected happened. Someone else entered the picture, someone neither of them had seen coming. And with them came a truth that neither of them had been prepared to face. The past wasn't just haunting them. It was about to destroy everything. The storm that had been brewing between them finally reached its peak. The weight of secrets, misunderstandings, and unspoken words pressed down on them, threatening to tear apart everything that had been built, everything that neither of them had intended to begin, but had somehow become impossible to walk away from. She stood in front of him, arms crossed, eyes sharp with frustration, and something deeper, something more painful. I need the truth. No more excuses, no more half answers. If you ever cared about me at all, you owe me that much. He took a deep breath, his jaw clenched. I never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you? Her voice cracked at the end, a betrayal of the strength she was trying to hold on to. There was a long silence, heavy with things neither of them had said before. And then, finally, he spoke. Because I was afraid. Because I knew if I told you from the start, I'd lose you before I even got the chance to know you. She stared at him, her mind racing, trying to piece together the puzzle that had left her grasping for answers for so long. So you lied instead? I didn't lie, he said quickly. I held back the truth. Her laugh was bitter. That's the same thing. His hands balled into fists at his sides, frustration flickering across his face. I didn't think it would matter. I thought. He stopped himself, shaking his head. I thought I could make things right without you ever having to know. But I do know now, she shot back. And nothing about this feels right. For the first time since everything had started unraveling, he looked genuinely lost. This wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about the fact that no matter how much they had fought it, they had become something real to each other. And now that truth was out, threatening to destroy it all. The world around them was still in chaos. The media frenzy, the crumbling trust from those closest to them, the fallout of choices made long before they had even realized they were walking toward this moment. It all loomed over them like a storm that refused to pass. But then, just when she thought she had seen it all, something happened that changed everything. Someone else had known the truth all along. Someone who had been waiting for the right moment to strike. And when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place, it wasn't just their relationship on the line. It was their entire future. She stood there, heart pounding, as the final truth unraveled before her eyes. The weight of everything that had been hidden, everything that had been left unsaid, settled heavily between them. She had thought she was prepared for this moment, but nothing could have braced her for the way it truly felt to finally understand everything, to see the entire picture after being left in the dark for so long. His gaze was locked on her, searching her face for any sign of what she was thinking, how she was feeling. But she couldn't bring herself to speak just yet. There was too much to process, too many emotions clashing inside her. Anger, sadness, relief, even love, because despite everything, that feeling hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had only grown stronger, making this even harder. I should have told you sooner, he finally said, voice low, cautious. I was trying to protect you, but I realize now that keeping the truth from you only made things worse. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. You don't get to decide what protects me. You don't get to choose what I should or shouldn't know. I know. He stepped closer, hesitating as if unsure if she would let him. I was scared. I've never had something like this before. I've never had someone like you, and I didn't want to lose you. His honesty was raw, and it cut through her defenses in a way she hadn't expected. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to walk away and never look back. But the truth was, she wasn't sure if she could. Because no matter how much had happened, no matter how much had been broken, there was still something between them. Something real. But could love be enough to fix this? Before she could say anything, the sound of a phone ringing broke the moment. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. His expression shifted instantly, turning serious. He answered, voice clipped. What is it? She watched as his body tensed, his free hand curling into a fist. Whatever he was hearing, it wasn't good. What do you mean they leaked it? His eyes darted to her, filled with urgency. No, don't do anything yet. I'm on my way. He ended the call, looking at her with an intensity that made her stomach tighten. It's worse than we thought. Her pulse quickened. What happened? He swallowed hard. Everything. It's all out now. The truth. The lies. The deal we made. Someone leaked it to the press, and now he shook his head, his jaw tightening. Now everyone knows. A chill ran through her. The truth had finally come to light, but not on their terms. And now they had no control over what happened next. For a long moment, they just stood there, both processing what this meant, what it would change. Then, finally, she spoke. So what do we do now? He met her gaze, and for the first time, there was no hesitation. No fear. We face it. Together. And just like that, everything shifted. Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. It wasn't about the mistakes they had made, or the secrets that had once divided them. It was about what came next, about fighting for what they still had, despite everything. It wouldn't be easy. The world would have its opinions, and the road ahead would be complicated. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what was coming, because no matter what happened, they would face it side by side.